Now, if you don't know who Dan Rather is, Dan Rather used to be the host of the CBS. He was the anchor of the CBS News. Did he take over for Walter Cronkite, or there must have been someone in the middle? I don't remember. But anyway, he was the big shot.
He came out of the same dojo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what dojo means, but...
karate school.
Yeah, okay. So Dan Rather, okay. So, by the way, this is Dan Rather. So you're going to see a picture of him come up. That's Dan.
There he is.
That's Dan Rather. And he was the host of the CBS. He was the anchor of the CBS News. And then he got canned because he told the truth about George Bush's war record. And you can't do that. It's a long story. We'll get to it. But they fired him for telling everybody that George Bush didn't show up for his, what did they call that? National Guard service. That he went to. So he was, there was a way for rich guys to skip out on the war. You go join the Champagne division of this National Guard. Anyway, he got fired. So now he's doing a show for the guy who owns the Dallas Mavericks. Mark Cuban has a channel called Axis, I think it's called, or something. Who knows? I don't know where it is. I can't find it on my cable, and I certainly have never saw Dan Rather on there.
Should be called Allies.
I know how to find Mark Cuban on the Shark Tank. I watch that all the time. That's right on CNBC. I know where that is. Right?
Yeah.
But I don't know where to find Mark Cuban's cable channel. So anyway, so he was on with Rachel Maddow, Dan Rather. He's still considered a liberal icon, but guess what? He was talking about Donald Trump. And I can understand a newsman not wanting to use inflammatory language. But what Dan Rather does here in describing Donald Trump almost makes me feel sorry for him because he's obviously lost touch. Well, let's watch. Here we come.
Thinking. Now, as you know, I haven't been as hard on Donald Trump as some people, and I don't mean to be overly so, but when he says violence is good for my campaign, which he said recently, it may be good for his campaign, but what's good for the country?
Yeah.
And with all of these candidates.
Okay, so starts off good. What's good for the country? Okay, so he's going to start wagging his finger and say what's wrong with this and how come this hurts the. That's what news people should do. Not enough news people are doing that, by the way. Starts off strong. Here we go.
I wish they'd stop thinking about what's good for them and their campaign and their party and start thinking about what about the country?
So he just did a false equivalency. He just said, I wish they all would start worrying about what's. Okay, stop putting Donald Trump in the same category as regular lying politicians, okay? I know most politicians are horrible. Donald Trump is an extra special horrible, right? That's why there's a thing called Godwin's Law about Hitler. That's where he's getting into that level, okay? All right, so Dan Rather keeps going.
Violence may be good for his campaign, but it's not good for the country. I have no way of knowing what's in Donald Trump's heart. But some of his public rhetoric.
Really? You don't know what's in his heart? I don't know. Have you listened to a speech of his? Why is it being does he have a heart comb over? Why can't you see into it? And by the way, Dan Rather has that annoying thing that happens, and I hope it doesn't happen to me when I get older, is that when he talks, you can hear his teeth chattering inside of his mouth. Do you hear it? Is that only me that hears that?
Something's clacking around in there.
There's something clacking around in his mouth. Okay.
As well as the rhetoric of some of the other candidates, has certainly damaged our civil public discourse. But Donald Trump has a decision to make. He can turn down the volume. And if he's as smart as I think he is, if he's as good-hearted as I hope he is, he'll turn down the volume some.
Good-hearted.
He's smart, and he's probably good-hearted.
He's probably good-hearted and he's smart. He's just making a mistake. You know what?
Yeah.
He doesn't know how politics work, and I bet I'm just going to ask him to look into his heart because now you know why they've relegated me to a channel nobody watches, right? Right? And it wasn't just the teeth clacking that people couldn't stand. That is... I understand that news people are supposed to be neutral, what have you, which is we've talked about why that's bullshit. They're supposed to be objective. And you can be objective and say, wow, Donald Trump, one of the bigger maniacs I've ever seen. He's actually dangerous. And he reminds me of a lot of strong-arm leaders in other countries. That's what you know what, I don't want to judge him. And I can't see into his heart. I bet he has a good heart. I bet he thinks... I don't know. There's at some point you become irresponsible, and what Dan Rather just did there was really irresponsible. And I like Dan Rather in general, right? I think he got screwed over at CBS as much as you can screw over somebody who you've been paying millions of dollars for 20 years. So I mean, he's doing okay, is what I'm saying, Dan Rather. And anyway, anybody have anything to say about that? Because that just blew my mind.
Well, it's, all I can think about is what a good heart Donald Trump must have.
He must have a good one.
I mean, watching this campaign, it's all heart.
I mean, and here's Dan Rather, a guy who was a newsman. He's known Donald Trump for 40 years. He knows what Donald Trump is about. He knows all the horrible things he's done. And this isn't something new. And this isn't about his new rhetoric. This is what Donald Trump does. He chased the president around for 4 years asking for his frickin' long-form birth certificate. I bet he looks into his heart. He's a racist, Dan. He's a race-baiting, fear-mongering, megalomaniac, xenophobe, misogynist. These are the words you should use to describe him, not, I just look into his heart. I wish you could look into his heart and then he'd do the right thing.
Oh, that's the worst sound to hear into headphones. That's just brutal. But, it's like if he can properly diagnose the urgency of or how dangerous Trump is, he seems to sort of start with that. But if you actually are being anywhere near accurate about how screwed up it is that this insane billionaire has risen to such a level in our political process and system, then the answer has to be the same amount of urgency. He should be screaming. He should be pulling his whatever teeth remain out of his head and freaking out at how dangerous this is and pointing out how actually threatening it is to the future of our country and destabilizing to global economies all over the place. You don't go, well, hopefully if we give it enough time, the volume will get turned down.
Let's just wait it out, Dan.
Yeah.
That's his advice. Let's wait it out. I bet you and the problem isn't just the volume. Right? Have you looked at his platform? He wants to exclude 1/3 of the world's population from coming into our country. Turn down the volume. His ideas are horrible, Dan. I mean, that's just and Rachel Maddow, she doesn't say, and she's just being nice. She doesn't want to be disrespectful. But again, let's remember that he's saying this stuff on a news channel that airs all his speeches unedited and live. And Rachel Maddow has not screamed about that enough to get fired yet. So I'm going to say she could do a better job on that. Rachel Maddow, as soon as she gets fired, that's when we know she's really doing her job at MSNBC. Until then,